Hey everybody, it's D-Vase here. Thanks so much for listening to the Mormon News Roundup. If you haven't heard about Anchor by Spotify, it's the easiest way to make a podcast with everything you need all in one place. Allow me to explain. Anchor has the tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. When hosting on Anchor, you can distribute your podcast on listening platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more. It's everything that you need to make a podcast all in one place. And best of all, Anchor is totally free. So download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
Ladies and gentlemen, kicking off the first stop on his world tour, our new president and prophet, Russell M. Nelson! You say you want some revelation, well, here you go. It's gonna blow your freaking mind.
Hey everybody, it's June 18th, 2022, and welcome to the weekly Mormon News Roundup where Al and D-Vase ruminate on the great and spacious beehive. How's it going, Al?
I am doing pretty dang good this weekend. How's D-Vase?
Oh, I'm doing very, very well. Things are really heating up in the great and spacious beehive. We're going to analyze Netflix Keep Sweet, Pray, and Obey Episode 2, part of the miniseries. We're also going to dissect who is the most popular LDS General Authority. We're going to try to solve that once and for all. We're going to bring you listeners up to speed on the latest changes in tithing categories for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We're going to cover the first ever BYU approved on-campus Lgbtq demonstration and introduce you to the Mormon, quote, marriage addict, end quote, mom who has been married 11 times. We've got a lot to go through, don't we, Al?
It's a busy, busy week, and you aren't kidding. It's heating up out here. It was a cold spring, and now we've got fires all around the Salt Lake Valley. Most of the state of Utah is running out of water, it's summer's here. It's hot, finally.
Well, these are all prophesied, Al. This is all in the book of Revelations. It's just showing to us all that this is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This is all prophesied. This is all according to the plan, correct?
That's true.
It's just, it definitely is. Hey, let's follow up from last week here. I saw a tweet that's going to be in our show notes here that I thought was interesting, that we've been following up on some of the gun violence episodes that have really hurt a lot of people, including the Uvalde, Texas, and some of the other mass shootings that have happened. And I saw this tweet that came out, and I thought it was a very interesting perspective. It's in our show notes on June 10th, 2022 at 6:13 p.m. from at Potato Mormon. And the tweet here, it says, perspective, on October 30th, 1838, at Hans Mill, Missouri, 18 Mormons were killed by approximately 250 militiamen firing single-shot muskets. That is 3 fewer dead than were killed at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas, by one shooter with an AR-15. And it's showing the Hans Mill site there with the church, owns that site. And it shows in memory of the victims of the Hans Mill Massacre way back in 1838. And it's just showing the difference in between what it took to kill a few people back in 1838. It took 250 people firing single-shot muskets, and now that can be done in just a matter of minutes with the AR-15 rifles.
Absolutely. We're definitely not dealing with the same kind of firearms that were available when the Constitution, specifically the Second Amendment, was written. We're dealing with some very different technology, some very different weaponry.
Yeah, and especially some of these, especially if you upgrade some of these AR-15s, you put on bump stocks, you increase the capacity of the magazines.
Yeah.
You put on body armor to make it impossible for the police or very difficult for the police to take you out. You have hundreds of rounds at your disposal. You're practicing being able to change out these magazines in just a matter of seconds. The amount of carnage that an AR-15 can do versus a musket is it's got to be an order of magnitude of maybe 100 to 1.
I suspect if you had even one AR-15 inside Hans Mill where they were boarded up in the blacksmith shop, I think that you would have had a very different outcome with the Hans Mill Massacre, and the numbers would have been very skewed to the other side. You would have had an obliterated mob attacking from the outside. And that's just one AR-15.
Yeah, it's got a ratio of an AR-15, 100 people with single-fire musket shots who are not very well trained, or one person with virtually unlimited ammunition with an AR-15. And honestly, I think that the one person with the AR-15 might have the edge. I mean, it is just amazing
for sure.
Terrifying what these weapons can do.
Oh, they're built to be super accurate, super powerful, super deadly. That's why they were designed, and it's everything in that technology is behind that.
And you know, it appears that President Biden is, you know, he's signaling that he wants Congress to reinstate that assault weapons ban that we had back in, what was that, about 1994?
Yeah, about 1994 is when they instituted that, and they lifted that in the early 2000s, I think.
Yeah, it was about 8 or 10 years, as I recall.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Hey, you know, and we discussed this before. The actual studies, it's very hard to know if that gun ban, assault weapons gun ban, drove mass shootings down or up, because there's so many factors that are associated with any single mass gun shooting.
Sure. Yeah.
So, you know, there's a lot of mixed studies that show, you know, Republicans, when they talk about it, they say, well, you know, guns, the gun ban didn't necessarily reduce gun shooting. So, you know, gun violence. So why would we want to do it again?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's that whole saying of, you know, guns don't kill people, people kill people. But a lot of times what we're seeing is that people that kill people use guns to do it.
Yeah, they do. And I've never been to Hans Mill, but I have been to the Bear River Massacre up in northern Utah. Have you been there too, Al?
Yeah, it's let's see, it's located up in Franklin County, just northwest of Preston, Idaho. So it's more close to Preston. It's just outside of Preston, but it's on the road that goes between Preston and Pocatello. I've been past that several times. And you know, one of these days I really need to stop and take a good look around, because that's a sad story of Mormon history too, the Bear River Massacre.
Sure was. And when I went there, it was a number of years ago. It must have been 15 or 20 years ago. There was virtually there's no monuments. There was no really information. And that's what the church also, you know, is kind of famous for. They didn't put up a monument to the Mountain Meadow Massacre until, I want to say, about 15 years ago. There wasn't even a monument to that.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
And I don't believe I'm definitely sure that when I went through for the Bear River Massacre, that there was no monuments to that. The church does not like to call attention to some of these negative aspects of church history in any way.
I believe that they do have some sort of I think there's some sort of a monument there. It's not been put there by the church for sure. I believe it was put there by the Shoshone-Bannock Nation.
Oh,
I think that they put a marker there, and there's definitely one of those roadside signs. So as you drive past, you can see, you know, you can pull over and read about it. You know, just like they have this is a point of interest or a historical landmark. Another thing is, if you just drive a little further up that road, you see the Red Rock Pass, through which Lake Bonneville drained into the Snake River and then flowed out. So, you know, it's really an interesting route. Anybody that's driving through that part of the country really ought to drive up through Preston, Idaho, stop and see the Bear River Massacre site, and stop and see that Red Rock Pass. Some really significant parts of history.
Well, it's interesting that the church does, if you think about other violent episodes in church history, if you think about Carthage Jail, the church quickly bought Carthage Jail, and they have full-time missionaries manning Carthage Jail.
Yes, they do.
If it's an item of church history that reflects negative on church history, then they don't really erect a lot of monuments, and they don't want to bring a lot of attention to it. But the Carthage Jail, well, that's the assassination of Joseph Smith and Hiram Smith. And, you know, they're going to, you know, say, hey, this is where he was killed for his belief, and he was a martyr of God, and therefore we're going to buy it, and we're going to, you know, have people manning there full-time 365 days of the year.
Yep, they did the same thing with Liberty Jail. They purchased that. Did they move Liberty Jail to a different site? I can't remember.
I don't know. We'll have to follow up on
I
that
do know that.
week.
Yeah, I know the church owns it, and you know, that was where there was that great suffering. That a lot of the church leaders were being held after the Mormon War. You know, in Missouri back in the 1800s, and that's where they were held. So.
You know what, Aldo? What is the most violent episode in all of not Latter-day Saint, but Mormon history? What is the most violent thing that has ever happened to Mormon history? I'm not talking about the flood, because that doesn't count. But there is a huge violent episode in Mormon history that is not even more violent than the Mountain Meadow Massacre. I'm trying to put you on the spot here.
Okay, boy, yeah, because we have not talked about this beforehand. I'm going to say, let's see, the most violent episode.
I'm going to give you a hint here. The church owns it, and they have missionaries there.
Okay, church owns it, and there's missionaries there. Is this the Hill Cumorah?
Oh, yes, the Hill Cumorah.
It is. Okay.
So the Hill Cumorah.
Millions of dead people that are supposed to be there.
Remember, the Jaredites were wiped out at the Hill Cumorah.
That's right.
And that was 5 million, according to the Book of Mormon, plus women and children. So,
yeah.
Or maybe it was actually, I think it was 2 million plus women and children. Correction, 2 million plus women and children. So we're talking about 5 million people killed by the Jaredites on the Hill Cumorah. And then when the Nephites and
Lamanites, dead people.
They also had the last battle of the Nephites and the Lamanites there, where somewhere around 450,000 people died.
Mm-hmm.
So these are literally the two largest land battles that have occurred on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
Took place at the Hill Cumorah. And remember, we have First Presidency letters in 1990 where members have written in and said, hey, what about that? We've heard about the two Hill Cumorah thing. Is that a thing? And we have First Presidency letters back in 1990 that say the Hill Cumorah is where it all took place. So yes, when it comes to violent church history, the church is it's very interesting what the church's response to it is. Sometimes you can serve an entire mission at the Hill Cumorah.
Yeah.
You can have a whole mission at Carthage, but they don't man anything at Mountain Meadows. They don't man anything at the Bear River Massacre. It's very interesting how the church approaches all of these violent episodes in their past.
Well, I know that the church really tried to distance itself for a long time. They flat out denied for a long time that the church had any involvement at Mountain Meadows, but it came out that the facts were the facts. The church really was behind it. Well, the church membership, I should say, because I know there would be a lot of people that would say that this is still in question. Did Brigham Young command it? I tend to believe that there's enough evidence to say yes, and if they're both beforehand and after the fact to say that yes, this came down from Brigham Young. But there is that question: did it happen? Because there's it wasn't written down. However, on the other hand, you look at you look at a lot of Latter-day Saint history, and there's a lot of violent things that happened that was this commanded by the church? We don't know. But I tend to think that when it comes to Mountain Meadows, that's pretty well locked that the church was responsible, but they're still playing that same game with the Bear River Massacre of, that was the military that was that murdered the Shoshone. Yeah, but who sent the military up there in the first place? Who told the military that this was a violent band of Indians that was attacking settlers in Cache County?
Right, and who Porter Rockwell was the guide up there? Was he a rogue agent, or was he dispatched as an official emissary?
Yeah, for him being a rogue agent, he sure was involved with a lot of the very top members, very top leadership of the church at the time.
Well, he was, and he had a history of being very violent. With the Governor Boggs assassination, they never did prove that it was him. They have, he's a very shadowy figure, so they have been able to prove a lot of these things. And along with the Mountain Meadow Massacre, there's no smoking gun that shows that Brigham Young ordered it or condoned it. That's the issue for me, at least.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But that's a follow up from the violence from last week. Let's move on to our first feature article here, which is "Keep Sweet, Pray, and Obey," and that's from the new series, which has been released on Netflix, and we're reviewing episode 2 during this time. So episode 2 from this covers the Fundamental Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and this article was released on June 14th, 2022 on inews.co.uk. And this is the second episode, so it traces basically the foundation. The entire miniseries traces the foundation of the Fundamentalist Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints from basically its inception up until the present day. So this particular episode 2, takes it from basically when Warren Jeffs took over around the Winter Olympics time frame up until just before he was arrested. So this is talking about around the time frame of 2002 to 2006 and what he did to the religion during that time. What did you get from episode 2 there, Al?
Okay, so to recap with episode 1 was pretty much about Rulon Jeffs, Warren's dad, the previous prophet who was supposed to be the last prophet, according to what the teachings had been. Then episode 2 is where Warren takes over. I thought that episode 2 was really compelling. And what I like the most about it is that Warren Jeffs, in the way that he is portrayed in here, they take these pictures where he just looks creepy. Even when he's looking happy and like he's having a good time, he just looks as sinister and creepy as can be. He looks as like a snake just glaring out at you, and practically want to see his tongue just kind of whip out and in real quick, just like he's so slimy looking. But but a lot of this is given from the perspective of his victims, and that's something I really, really appreciate about this show as compared to Under the Banner of Heaven. Is this gives a lot more perspective from the standpoint of the victims who found themselves caught up in Warren Jeff's web and the whole web of the FLDS, and how they got out. So you hear there's some sad stories in here. Little love stories that ended tragically. I mean, this is stuff that Romeo and Juliet type stuff of that kind of love story. That, man, it's heartbreaking. Definitely need to see it. If you haven't, watch it.
This is a must. This is a must watch. I don't care what your feelings are about the church, whether you're in, whether you're out, whether you've never been a member, or whether you don't know anything about the FLDS. This is a must watch. Yeah. So, after Rulon Jeff died in 2002, Warren Jeff then consolidated power in the church because there was no clear succession plan. And how did he do that? It was by marrying all of Rulon's 65 wives and taking those 65 children into his own household.
Yeah. Now, here's another thing that they point out, Dives, is that he married. Okay, so within the FLDS, they did a lot of like moving wives around and children around. So if a priesthood holder got excommunicated and kicked out, then they would strip him of his wives and children, and they would give those wives and children to somebody else to raise. And so like the way that the kids perceived the mothers in this group, everybody was their mother, right? And so they didn't have necessarily one particular mother. They had the mom that gave them birth, sure, but they looked to all these women as mothers. And Warren Jeffs married a lot of his dad's wives, including his own mothers. And that's where we get real creepy.
Yep. And towards the end of episode 2, that's where you start seeing that Warren Jeffs is, first of all, he's assigning out these marriages. He is one that has control of the entire FLDS community of 15,000 people. And if you want to get married, you have to go through him. And he starts assigning marriages out at even younger and younger. This used to be somewhat of an anomaly, but he made it more common practice where 14-year-olds were getting married to Warren Jeffs himself. He would take them to Nevada. He would marry them in a sham marriage that would not be, recorded in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
And, those individuals were, raped and tortured and mentally, just the mental, the struggles that they went through is just horrific.
Yeah. I'm not sure if Warren Jeffs just understood so much about the way to control people by controlling what they can wear and, how they can do their hair. I'm not sure if it's that or if he had a fetish, but the whole, prairie dress and, pompadour hairstyles with the intricate weaves and braids in the back, that was enforced strictly by Warren Jeffs. Under his father, Rulon, people, as long as they were covered, they could wear pretty much wherever they want. Specifically, women could wear wherever they want.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, people could wear jeans under Rulon Jeffs. People could still wear jeans. People could still have reasonable hairstyles. People could still have jobs outside of the FLDS community.
Yeah.
Warren Jeffs really radicalized everything and everyone. He really ramped up the control and really, made life a living hell for a lot of the people there.
Yeah,
one of the most difficult parts about being in the FLDS, especially during this time frame, from 2002 to 2006, the fact that the church owns all of the property. They called it what did they call it? The perpetual.
Oh yeah, the UEP. It was
United Effort Plan.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's been since broken up. The government came in and broke up the UEP. But at that time, Warren Jeffs controlled everything: your home, who you marry, where you go,
Yeah.
what you do. I mean, you want to talk about a high level of control. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah. He really ruled that place with an iron fist.
And they talked about in the episode how actually Hilldale and Colorado City were the most lawless places in the entire country for a number of years, because the sheriff's department really, they really didn't do anything unless Warren Jeffs told them to do it. So you couldn't get justice. You couldn't. It was like Wild Wild West back in the 1800s, and like I don't know, Deadwood, South Dakota.
Yeah, I mean, a really good comparison, I would say, is like the way that the scouting program was integrated with the LDS church. That, being a scoutmaster in a lot of wards was a calling. So, being the sheriff of Hilldale was kind of a calling. And being a police officer was, almost like, a church calling, that this is how you're going to serve the community. And by serving the community, we mean the interests of the leadership of the FLDS church.
Right. So if there were underage marriages or there were illegalities going on in the city, well, you'd go to the police department, and unless Warren Jeffs told them to do something, nothing would happen. It was a totally place where you had no personal rights apart from what the Warren Jeffs and the church told you to do.
Yeah.
And I also found it very interesting that, unlike if you imagine back to the founding of the Church of Christ back in 1830, which eventually became the Church of the Latter-day Saints, which eventually became the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. If you think about the founding in 1830, it was just Joseph Smith and the first elder, Oliver Cowdery. There were no apostles, I believe, until 1835.
I believe that's right. Yeah.
So, and that's the same way with FLDS. They don't have apostles. They don't have that structure. It's all rooted in one person. And it's kind of like when Joseph Smith started the church back in 1830, he basically held all of the keys and basically had all of the power.
Yeah, this is a show that I think that the faithful LDS really need to watch it, just because for them saying, well, we have nothing to do with the FLDS, it's a completely different offshoot. Well, if you look at the FLDS, you will see a lot closer version of how Joseph Smith's church originally was set up.
Yeah, I mean, he wanted a city of Zion. He wanted, they tried in Kirtland communal property. This was the basic, the FLDS is really an extension of Joseph Smith's vision for how things would be. And you say, well, also Joseph Smith, he had underage brides. He controlled marriages. He sent people out on missions and then married their wives. It was a very similar feel to how Warren Jeffs controlled things.
For sure. And when you hear Warren Jeffs talk and the cadence in his voice, I have to feel like that cadence is handed down generation to generation. And I mean, within the LDS church, everybody knows that there's a certain general conference voice and a certain cadence that both the men and the women use. The women use a super high pitch, sweet voice, just as sugary sweet as can be. And the men use this very structured and solemn and very very earnest tone in their speaking. Well, Rulon Jeffs, Warren Jeffs, the leaders of the FLDS, they've got a very sanctimonious tone as well, and they speak very very lofty in the way that they speak, and very condescending or self-righteous sounding. It's really something to hear Warren Jeffs on these recordings. And it gets more sinister as the thing goes.
I'm sick and twisted because I listened to another couple of his lectures that have been recorded this last week. Mm-hmm. I just find it absolutely fascinating because, like I said in our last episode, it's like walking a page back into early church Mormonism. It's a very simple faith. Follow the priesthood, listen, pray, and obey. I mean, keep sweet, pray, and obey. Follow the priesthood. The Lord will never lead the church astray. And there's no nuance in any of this. There's no double speak. It's all laid out right there. Polygamy is God's way, and we are the chosen generation, and Jesus is coming soon. I mean, this is very similar to the way that Joseph Smith would have talked and what he would have said.
Oh, certainly. And I feel like the current LDS church, the Bergamite church in Salt Lake, when it comes to like general conference, their messages have gotten a little bit more complex sounding, but they really, even though they sound more complex, fundamentally on the very most basic level, the topics are very much the same. The message is very much the same. So there's been some adjustment over the decades since the splitting between the LDS and the FLDS, but the topics are pretty similar.
Yeah, you can splice in Warren Jeff's, a lot of his sermons directly into an old general conference talk, and people would not be able to tell the difference if they didn't know it.
For
I mean,
sure.
a lot of his sermons, and this is the second most popular show on Netflix right now. This is getting a lot of airtime.
Yeah, it's blowing up, and I think it was national news when they stormed the when the feds stormed the compound there in Texas, which that's going to come in. That's not this episode, but we'll be talking about that when it comes. But I don't think people really understood what was going on, and you're going to get a really good inside view from the people that were there that when it was stormed. So this is going to get really interesting. Keep watching. Stay tuned, and we're going to be talking about that one in weeks to come.
I cannot recommend this series more highly. It is definitely one of the best miniseries that I've seen in a while. I cannot wait until we're done with this show recording, because that means I get to watch episode 3. That's how much I'm looking forward to it. So I'm giving it 5 stars. Go out there and take a listen.
Yeah, Dives, you definitely did this one the right way. I'm sorry. I'm just such a binge watcher. I couldn't, stifle myself and my wife from watching it all the way through. We sat and we watched the whole thing in one sitting. It's that easy to watch. It's really well made. And any true believing members of the church, they should watch this, because this does not reflect poorly on the LDS church. This reflects poorly on the FLDS. But really, the LDS church, by comparison, they're some of the heroes in this story. Because these are the people that opened their homes to welcome in, say, the lost boys that were kicked out of the FLDS community,
right,
in order to make room for there to be a surplus of young women to marry off to the leaders. Yeah. So this is something that everybody should be watching.
Yes, indeed. It should be.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to take a step in a different direction. We're going to head over to Twitter for mine. So we had a suggestion that was handed out there where we wanted to find out who the most popular apostles were on Twitter. And I took it even a step further. I went to Facebook as well. So I think that we have a couple of different generations that are attracted to Twitter and Facebook. So I wanted to see the comparison and the contrast. So what we have found here is I went onto Twitter and looked up Russell M. Nelson all the way down to Ulysses Soares, and just got the numbers of followers that they have on Twitter. And then I went over to Facebook and I did the same thing. How many people are following them on Facebook?
Let me give you, I don't know the answer to your research, Al, but can I give you a prediction and we'll see if it's correct?
Please do. Let's go with this.
All right. So my prediction is that Elder Uchtdorf is going to be up on top. President Nelson, President Oaks will also be on top. President Eyring. Those are going to be in your top 4. And then maybe Elder Bednar. And then along the least popular would be the most newly called general authorities. That is my prediction.
You're not bad there, Dives. You got a really good mind for how the public psyche or persona works. Because so President Nelson, he's not number 1. Dieter Uchtdorf is number 1. Dieter Uchtdorf on Twitter has 308.3 thousand followers. Russell M. Nelson has 234.4 thousand followers. You were wrong with Dallin Oaks and Henry Eyring. These guys aren't nearly as popular. Dallin Oaks, one of the lesser popular people, at 199.5 thousand followers. He didn't even get up to the 200,000 mark. Henry Eyring, he went above the 2,000 mark, 205.7 thousand. Then you're right. There's kind of a descending order. However, David Bednar and Jeffrey Holland are neck and neck. Jeffrey Holland is actually 1,000 fewer followers than David Bednar. David Bednar's got 259.2 thousand. Jeffrey Holland's got 259.1. M. Russell Ballard kind of got left behind a little bit, 214.4 thousand. So not as popular as Elder Bednar, but then it pretty much runs downhill as you would expect. 134s, 150, all the way down to Ulysses Soares trails behind because he's the newest at 65.5 thousand. Now, keep in mind this is Twitter, and I think that Twitter is more our generation's social media platform. This is where people that are kind of in their 30s to 40s would be. So now we're going to go to Facebook, and I feel like Facebook is where you get a little bit more of the older demographic, where you get people in their 40s, 50s, and up. This is their kind of social media. So over there, we have something different happening. We've got, let's see, Russell M. Nelson leads the pack with 907,800. Let's see. Yeah. Wow. 907,800 followers on Facebook. He's got he's very popular on Facebook.
Wow.
And we kind of follow a similar pattern. We've got Dieter Uchtdorf at 776,000. 776,000. Then Elder Oaks isn't nearly as hated amongst the older generations. He's 686,000. Yeah. Henry Eyring, he's 454,000. M. Russell Ballard, 331,000. Jeffrey Holland, 445,000. David Bednar, more popular than most of them. He's trailing behind Dieter Uchtdorf at 687,000. So he's not just your favorite apostle. He's a lot of people's favorite apostle, too. Yeah. A little bit of a dark horse from behind here. Ronald A. Rasband. We dropped down in between, from Quentin Cook to Neil L. Anderson. We're in the 200,000 range. Ronald Rasband has 414,000 followers on Facebook. I'm surprised by that. And here's the other real kicker. Okay, our two non-white apostles that are at the very back end, Garrett W. Gong and Ulysses Soares. Yeah. They both are sitting around 340,000 followers on Facebook, which is the low guy was Dale G. Renlund at 163,563 followers. So these guys actually went and got followers ahead. I'm not sure if that's because of the non-white community within the LDS church. But I think it speaks to something very interesting, something that I'm going to point out a little bit later as well. But I think that you have some really good people in the church, but I think that the church itself is fairly racist. However, these guys, I think the church is accepting of people of different races or different sexualities or different customs or backgrounds and cultures than they come from. I think that there's just a church that is got a hand up towards other cultures or different races, and that's kind of been the way it's been all the way going back. But it seems to me that on the bright side, you've got some good people that are that they like people that are different from them. So that's exciting.
Let me ask, so you think that Elder Gong and Elder Schwartz are pretty low, both of them, and you think that the reason for that is not necessarily because they're somewhat newly called. They've only been in for, I don't know, 5-10 years at the most, but you think that it's because members of the church are not as accepting of apostles from more diverse backgrounds?
Seems to be, at least the younger ones. I'm surprised because the older ones on Facebook are more accepting. They don't seem to be all that popular. I mean, on Twitter, the popularity goes up along with their seniority until you get to the long timers, and this would be David Bednar and Dieter Uchtdorf. Quentin L. Cook is pretty much where the cutoff is, because Henry B. Eyring, M. Russell Ballard, these old timers, they that's where it gets really interesting. Is then you start to see, well, I like this guy more than that guy, or I don't really like Dallin H. Oaks. Dallin H. Oaks, he's been one of the most outspoken anti-LGBTQ people in the first presidency, and he trails behind 199,000 followers on Twitter. But within the older generation on Facebook, 686,000, seems like he resonates more with that older generation.
Interesting, very interesting. And of course, the church has official accounts on Facebook and Twitter. They do not have official accounts on Instagram. They don't have anything on TikTok. So those are for the much younger generation.
Yeah.
Probably
now,
right.
I want to point out that on Facebook, they have a legal disclaimer on each and every one of these profiles that says kindness is the essence of celestial life. That's a quote. They want only kind, happy words to be put in the post. They also put a huge legal disclaimer following this call for only kind thoughts and uplifting comments. Then the legal disclaimer says any words that are posted here become the property of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and we can do whatever we want with those.
Okay, so it sounds like at the end of every post that they have keep sweet, pray, and obey.
Basically.
Sounds like what they're telling me.
That sounds yeah. I mean, either that or the church is just full of a bunch of snowflakes that can't handle a differentiating point of view.
Now, we don't have a super deep analysis, but I wonder if the number of followers also relates to how active that they are. We don't have time to get into that today, but I wonder if they're more active, if that is generating more followers. More or less.
Well, one way or another, this was a really exciting thing for me to delve into. Very interesting. I'm just fascinated by little statistics like that. So I was glad to take on this challenge.
Very nice. Well, we will be keeping an eye on all of these official accounts of the church, and we are watching them. And any good tweets that it's very hard for any, I think, newsworthy tweets to come out or Facebook posts to come out because these are heavily sanitized. I don't imagine that Russell M. Nelson, when he's being at home after a meeting in a limousine, that he's in the back seat typing this out with his thumbs. I'm just going to go out on a.
He doesn't really strike you as being the type of granddad that likes to scroll Facebook and down.
So I think these are heavily curated. So we will be watching them. And it's very hard to get news sources out of these official ones because they're so carefully, they're very careful about the public facing persona that they put out.
Very true.
And you're not going to see, an apostle who is just going to take a selfie on a golf course and post it and say, hey, this is a beautiful day today. Enjoy life. Praise God. You're not going to see something like that is at a more personal level. All of these are going to be liturgical, kind of faith promoting posts at all times.
And this is a great place to mine for memes. This is where they put those kinds of things. I'm going to put a headshot with a quote on it. This is the sort of thing you're going to get on those.
Very nice, very nice. Well, thanks for doing that research. That's very good stuff, and we're going to be following up on that.
This podcast is brought to you by our friends over at Signature Books, www.signaturebooks.com. We invite you to check out their latest book written by Romney Burke, which is entitled Susie Young Gates, Daughter of Mormonism.
Brigham Young had over 50 wives and 56 children, but none has better name recognition than daughter Susie Young Gates. She lived from 1856 and died in 1933. Yet she, like so many women of Mormonism's past, has remained a mystery to most church members. In Susie Young Gates, Romney Burke, the author, paints a portrait of a strong woman who rose to prominence within the church, fought for the rights of women throughout the country, yet dealt with personal trials and her share of heartbreak.
Our next article is on the church has, just in the last couple of days, announced changes to tithings and offerings and donations, and some categories are being discontinued. And we got this off of LDSliving.com, and this was published by Haley Lunsberg and Jake Franson on June 14, 2022. So now, Al, when you go to submit your tithing or fast offering online, you can still submit it to your bishop with the old, with the old paper and
the
envelope.
paper and envelope. Yeah.
Yeah, and you have the carbon copy and all that, but most people are in our modern society are paying it online. So when you log to the church's donations page on the church's website, there's now a new message that appears, and when you're going to pay your tithing. And the changes include the following. So there's a new donation category that is called general offerings. And that's going to replace several other categories, including Book of Mormon, temple construction, perpetual education, and a couple of other discontinued categories. So they're rolling basically 6 categories that you used to be able to donate and say to the church, I'm giving you this money and it is for this purpose. So discontinuing all those categories and just putting it into one general offerings category. And also, there used to be a place where it was called other. So you would put in your tithing, and if it was with a tithing slip, you could say, I'm going to donate this money to the church. It would say other, and you could write something in.
Well, like if you want to donate to like the fund for your kids going to young women's camp or something, you can specify it there.
Yes. Now that category is going to be renamed local, and the authorized member financed activities category is going to be discontinued. So this article shows the screenshot of what it used to look like, the old image of the church's website, and now the new one is much more simplified and much less choices. And the church has sent out a letter to state mission and district presidencies that says that starting on June 10th, all these changes are going to be taking place, which was just a couple of days ago. And the reason that the church is giving, now this is the most important thing to me. Okay. What is the reason that the church is giving for the reduction of church categories? And according to the article, it is, quote, to streamline the recording of donations by ward clerks, end quote. So really? It used to be that ward clerks, when you put in a tithing, the ward clerks would have to figure out all the categories and put it in there. So I guess it was somewhat time consuming. I didn't think it really took that much time, but
it seemed like an afternoon on a Sunday, like for an hour or two with 2 ward clerks there. That's what it would take.
Right. Now, here's where that's the article. But now, of course, we need to have expert analysis. Al, why do you think the church is changing the tithing categories, removing so many categories, and just making it much more general instead of specific?
Well, until they give a official reason that goes counter to my opinion's as good as anybody. I'm thinking that the church is just trying to say, hey, we can do whatever we want with whatever you give us. So donations to the church, that's for the church to decide where they go. Whether it goes to investments, whether it goes to humanitarian aid, what it goes to is none of my business after I hand that over to the bishop.
Right. So what's interesting, and we joked about this in our before the episode, it's that the church is becoming more transparent about being less transparent.
Exactly.
So, as Elder Ballard said in his famous Q&A, he's as transparent as he knows how to be when it comes to difficult issues. And we're getting the reduction of, hey, you just give it to us, and we'll take care of it we got it from here. Thank you for the donation. We'll take it from here and use prophetic insights, and the presiding bishop will determine where this money needs to go. I know you think that you want this money to go to X, Y, or Z, but that's not where it's going to go. It's going to go where we want it to go.
Yep. You are entrusting it into the church's hands to make the best discretionary decision for your funds.
Right. And the church is, I think, giving up a little bit of the facade. I never really believed when I was paying tithing, when I paid tithing, I never really believed that whatever I was checking the box, honestly, in my heart of hearts, that it was actually going to there.
Yeah, and I think most members probably just they trust the church.
Right.
They don't. It doesn't have to go there. If the church has a surplus of Book of Mormon copies for the missionaries to hand out, then maybe anything donated to the Book of Mormon fund can be filtered over to the humanitarian fund in order to help where there was a tsunami last week or something. I think most people that are in the church, they're okay with the church channeling funds around where it's needed.
Sure.
But I just would like to see a little bit more of a transparent declaration. Okay, this is what the church has done. This is how much we got donated for Book of Mormon copies for our missionaries to distribute. And because we had a surplus, the church decided it was more in the best interest of humanitarian efforts to give that to humanitarian aid to relieve the suffering of those that were affected by a tsunami. So I'd like to see the church have that kind of transparency instead of saying, we don't know how to be any more transparent with you. This is none of your business.
Now, the church, even back the last time that record tithing donations, I was listening to D. Michael Quinn podcast, was 1915. Okay. So back in church released how much tithing was given, and I want to say it was somewhere in the neighborhood of $1 million back in 1915. So they have in time past said this is how much money we've gotten. So direction back in 1915 to have that kind of transparency, but now that's not the Lord's direction to have that kind of transparency. What changed?
Yeah, exactly. And that, I guess we really need to get some real true blue Mormons on here to ask them some questions about that, get some perspective. Like, what does the average church member think the church takes in tithing over the course of a year? I'd be interested to see if they're aware that figure's actually in the billions.
Yeah, according to Lars Nielsen from the Enzyme, that is somewhere in the neighborhood of $8 billion a year that is brought in tithing. Now, the church, about 6 years ago, they updated the tithing and offering paper slips. The old slip, had some verb on the bottom, updated in the new slip. Now, the new slip says that though reasonable, this is what the new slip says, quote, though reasonable efforts will be made globally to use church donations as designated in the categories, all donations become the church's property and will be used at the church's sole direction to further the church's overall mission, and quote, and to build the kingdom of God, Al.
Oh.
Yeah, so I added that extra part in there. That's not in there. But yes, the category, I said end quote, I added that in there. So
that's inferred.
Yeah, exactly. To build up the kingdom of God on earth. So the church is acknowledging that, hey, we're going to try. You said you wanted to go to the World Mission Fund. You wanted the general missionary. You wanted to go to perpetual education. Well, we'll make reasonable efforts to it. But if we don't feel like it, then we're not going to do it.
Yeah. So now I have to ask, how far are we willing to take this? So, if I have desires for the church to make efforts towards, getting some new toys in the nursery room, will they make reasonable efforts towards that?
Because it still has the other specify, but again, the other specify category, that's going away, and it's going to be called local. What I really want to see on the tithing slip is just, okay, this is what I'd like to, category 1, Ensign Peak, just straight into the investment fund. Category 2, general authority pensions.
Yeah.
Category 3, mission presidents' children's free tuition at BYU. Category 4, anti-LGBTQ lobbying and legislation. I guess I could go on.
Exactly.
Category 5, luxurious mega mall retail speculation. I guess I could continue. Those are the categories I'd like.
This is exactly what I'm talking about. Is that how far are we willing to take this?
That's the categories I'd like to see. Now, that's something I sink my teeth into.
For sure. Because, just once, if I go back to church and start paying donations to the church, I want to be able to specify, I want this to go to heal the suffering of the LGBTQ kids that have been kicked out of their parents' houses because they came out. So,
or kicked out of BYU and they lost a whole year or several years worth of credits.
Yeah, exactly. Go and reimburse those kids for all that money that they've spent in tuition.
Right. So I just find it very interesting, and I think the church knows that the church knows that the members know that the categories don't really mean anything. The church is going to do with the money what they're going to do with it, and it's just an acknowledgement that, hey, well, let's stop the shell game and let's just come out and say, hey, you're going to give me, and we're just going to do with it what we feel is the most important thing to do with it.
And I think most people are fine with that, and I think it's just a matter of how many people do you honestly think have ever filled out any of the other lines besides the standard tithing, fast offerings, and maybe humanitarian aid? But Yeah, I mean, yeah, let's just do an other. It's okay.
Well, if you think about other churches, Al, they pass around a collection plate. You put some money into it. There's no categories.
No,
I mean,
just, hey, this goes to the church. I trust the church to use this however the church sees best. Now, we understand that the pastor needs to have a roof over his head. Sure. We understand that there's going to be beggars that come to the church's door. Let's look after them too. The church is going to need a new roof. Use the money for that too. So we trust the church to do as the church sees fit with these donations. Sure.
absolutely. Hey, you just think, think back, why not be more transparent? We talked about that in that episode with the Reorganized Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, now the Community of Christ, that
Yeah.
says, hey, we bring in $15 million worth of tithing per year. This is exactly how much money that we bring in. This is what we're using it for. And this is a complete report. And this is our deficits. This is our pensions. This is our liabilities. This is our mortgages. This is everything. And how faith promoting that is. And most churches, put out a financial statement that shows people what the money's being used for. And I just wonder why the church doesn't do it. I call on them to change that.
Yeah, exactly. And unless they do, I think that you're going to start to see a growth in the Community of Christ Church, because anybody that's looking to leave the LDS Church and is looking for a place to land without giving up their love for the Book of Mormon, the love for Joseph Smith, for their love for Mormonism, I think that there's a good place for them within the especially if they're in the LGBTQ community or a supporter of that. There's a home for them in the Community of Christ.
There certainly is. And one of the nice things, honestly, about the Community of Christ also is that they never canonize the Book of Abraham. So you don't have to. And the Book of Mormon also, you don't have to believe in it as a historical record. They leave a lot of these options up for yourself, so that you don't have to.
Sure.
But you don't have to believe in a literal global flood. You don't have to believe that dogs were always dogs and monkeys were always monkeys.
Yeah, they're a lot more flexible with their people.
Yeah, they are. Okay, that's it on tithing. Let's continue on. Our next article was on once again, LDSliving.com. The Philippines temple now has its Moroni, but increasing number of temples don't have the statue. And this was an article that was put out by Jake Franson on June 15, 2022. So the church's Facebook page shows a big Moroni that's going to be put on top of the new Philippines temple. But this article points out that an increasing number of recent temples do not have an angel Moroni statue. As of the article's publication, which was just a few days ago, Al, there were 64 renderings of planned temples, and 53 of them did not feature the angel Moroni statue. So angel Moroni is no longer in vogue. He's getting the boot. He's being fired at an alarming rate. Over almost 90% of new temples are not going to have Angel Moroni on the top. What happened about Angel Moroni? Why is he getting fired, Al?
I don't know. That's a good question, because Angel Moroni has been kind of a Mormonism symbol, at least in the last 50 to 60 years. I mean, this has kind of been what the church used for a symbol to replace the cross, right? Like, I mean, instead of believing in the death, the death artifact that killed Jesus, that the Christians have adopted, the church went and and their own thing and said, well, we don't want to worship the death of Christ. We want to worship his life. Well, let's put up the angel Moroni, and that was kind of their whole symbol. Is they put him on top of the Nauvoo temple. I don't know that Kirtland ever had one.
I don't believe so, no.
Yeah, Nauvoo had the weird looking flying angel that he was sideways, and his trumpet was pointed towards the ground. But then Salt Lake. I mean, Salt Lake. That one's a work of art, sure. The Moroni that was on top of the Salt Lake Temple, and I hope they will put it back on. That's going to be real interesting to see too. D-Base is, will they put Angel Moroni back on top of the Salt Lake Temple when they're done with this whole the renovations? So
I imagine that they will. I find it very interesting that Moroni is getting downgraded, because if you remember back to the legend of Brigham Young, Moroni himself came to the Manti Temple's dedication, which was
he did.
And
he gets around.
Yeah, does. He gets around and he hoofed it on foot. Moroni is very concerned with these temples, and maybe that's why he's a symbol. First of all, we've discussed this in previous times. The temple is the most visible symbol of the church. It is the symbol of the church, not the Book of Mormon, not Mormon missionaries, not anything else. So if you have your number one symbol, and the most recognizable aspect of that symbol is the golden angel Moroni on the top, and then you're rid of it, something is changing. I'm going to speculate here, Al, that when I went to the Washington, D.C. temple a couple of weeks ago, I noticed that Book of Mormon related artwork in the church in general is decreasing. And I think that this is a larger pattern of Moroni also getting the boot. And I think it's because of, I don't think that the Book of Mormon necessarily translates that well to people of other countries. The Book of Mormon is a very white-centered, it's a very
America-centric,
It's a very America-centered, the Christopher Columbus came to here. This is the chosen land, the chosen people, the dark and loathsome Lamanites. It's very white-centered and America-centered. And if you're using Moroni, who's really a symbol of the Book of Mormon, as your symbol, I don't think that it has as much resonance outside of the United States and outside of a white male culture that the church, I just don't think it has that kind of appeal.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And so I know that the whole reason they put Moroni up flying from the Nauvoo temple with the Trump in his lips, that was Joseph Smith saying, well, this is a fulfillment of prophecy from the book of Revelations, and the angel flying through the heavens having the everlasting gospel, and spreading that to the church or to the world. So I think that's why they set Moroni up as this big symbol in the first place. It's just really sad to see them step away from that, because I think you're probably right. I think they are stepping away from it, number one, because it's not a provable part of history, and it's becoming even more disproven as time goes on. And I think they are trying to get more and more mainstream in their Christian approach. So it's sad to see Moroni go away, especially since he's been such a key symbol within the church for decades and decades.
Right, yeah. Emphasizing Moroni on the top of the temple emphasizes that he's a real historical figure that lived a real historical life.
Yeah.
And the church, I think, wants to get away from making the Book of Mormon historical, the historical claims of the Book of Mormon. You're not going to see in General Conference people get up anymore and say, Nephi's voyage across the oceans was a miraculous, reality. I think that they want to leave a room open tacitly for members to say that I believe that the Book of Mormon is a good spiritual book. It teaches good morals. It teaches us to believe in God and worship. And, it leads me to live a good life. And I don't want to have to believe in, transoceanic submarines in 2000 BC or a literal Tower of Babel for the brother of Jared. I want to be able to believe in the Book of Mormon without having to believe in the historical aspects of that. So therefore, we're going to de-emphasize church artwork, temple artwork, and even the angel Moroni himself, so that there's less, so that you're not beating it over the members' heads.
Yeah. There wasn't any article to point this out, but I do want to take a moment just to point out that today was the groundbreaking ceremony for the temple that's going up in Smithfield, Utah. And I did see the rendering on that, and that one's missing Moroni from the top. I'm a little surprised that one's missing Moroni, because I would think that Cache Valley would, it's a very heavily Mormon area. So with the Smithfield temple going in there, it kind of has a look like the Nauvoo temple, where it's big, blocky, and has that big one spire on the end, kind of like the St. George too. Is that similar style? So it's going to be interesting, but yeah, no Moroni. So
right.
We're going to start seeing go away.
Let me just say one last thing about Moroni's importance in the Latter-day Saint faith, and that's, as a member of the military, your dog tags and your gravestones. You have to pick a symbol that is associated with the faith for your dog tags and your gravestone. And there's like 70 different symbols that you can pick from. A lot of Christians have crosses, have the Star of David. There's atheist symbol. It's a big A. And the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, their symbol is Moroni blowing his trumpet. Is that really the best symbol that the church wants to put forward for its forward-facing self? Do they want to be associated with Moroni, or do they want to be associated as, I don't know, as a Christian church, and Jesus is at the head?
I think that's why they did the rebranding with the new logo as the Christus being centric to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, because I believe that the logo before was the angel Moroni. So this is part of that whole rebranding thing. Just seems like they're kicking Moroni out.
Right. Very well. Very good. We'll be interested to see what happens with that Smith.
Yeah. Let's see. So we're on to the next one?
Yes, sir.
We are on to our Latter-day Saints Disproportionately Gay. This one's from timesandseasons.org by Stephen C. from June 11th, 2022. Mm-hmm. So this guy, he's actually a very faithful Latter-day Saint, but he's noticed that there seems to be a high percentage of or high ratio of homosexuality within LDS, specifically LDS men. And he did some research into it and found that, people with larger families, the more older brothers you have, the more your percentage increases of being gay if you're a male. There doesn't seem to be the same ratio amongst females for homosexuality. So that's kind of a different topic. But for this one, it's really interesting because I know that, like, San Francisco used to be the gay capital of the world, and now it seems like Salt Lake City's become a big gay center as well. Maybe even surpassed San Francisco as far as the ratios of homosexuals. But there is a huge community in Salt Lake City, and let's see, this person. He's an academic, very similar to Dives. He taught some classes, and he gets up to in front of his class, and he'll ask, what percentage do you think? What percentage do you think of the population is homosexual? And a lot of people will ask, or will suggest, well, maybe 15 to 30%, or even maybe 25 to 40%, even higher figures. Most people are shocked to find out that really the percentage of the population that's homosexual is between 1% and 3%. They're not really sure, because that's just going off of how many people have answered from the sample, and how many people felt comfortable answering. So this is kind of where we're at in the world. But yeah, we're in that kind of percentage, and then within the LDS Church, you're getting some really high estimates, like between 15. Let's see, no, was it 15%? Yeah, 15%.
About 15% of BYU in the latest survey showed, and we discussed this in the Julian Orr episode. About 15%
yes, we did.
Says that they're on the LGBTQ spectrum.
Yeah. So he's throwing a couple of charts here that show that let's see, you have N number of older brothers, as so to start off, your chance of being gay baseline 2%. If you have one older brother, 2.66%. Two older brothers, 3.54%. All the way up to 7 brothers. Once you get 7 older brothers, you have a 14.72% chance of being gay. And this is really interesting research that this guy's done. And so why do we have such a high rate of homosexuality within Mormonism and the LDS community? Well, because Mormons like to breed like rabbits. They're trying to populate and replenish the earth. And so, you're getting a lot of these conservative, right-wing Christian, or ultra religious, not even necessarily Christian, but ultra religious churches, or groups of people, I should say. They're having a lot of kids, and you're getting high rates of homosexuality coming out from them. And ironically, these are the groups that seem to be most hostile towards homosexuals.
Right. Yeah. So if you have 7 brothers in your family, there's a 42% chance that at least one of them will be gay.
42% chance. That means if you have two families, both of them have seven boys in it, you have at least, one out of two of those families is going to have a gay kid.
Yes, by percentage choice. So yes,
Yeah.
that he asked the question at the top: Are Latter-day Saints disproportionately gay? And he answers the question as yes. The yes, because of what is the exact technical term? They call it the fraternal birth order effect, which is well documented.
That's right. Yeah, there is a word for it.
That definitely takes us right into, which is BYU approving its first openly gay demonstration. So BYU students and faculty gather in first ever approved LGBTQ demonstration. This was on June 12th, 2022 in the Daily Universe. That's BYU's own newspaper by McCall Park. So students and faculty gathered in Brigham Young Square on June 11th for the first ever approved LGBTQ demonstration. This is a massive step forward, Al.
I never thought the day would come. Never thought.
Yeah, I mean, so this was 6 months in the making in order to get the permits and the approval for this to be able to go through. And they had a lot of different speakers from the BYU USGA president, also the Cougar Pride Center. And this event was officially approved through the new demonstration policy that BYU implemented in 2022. And it's showing BYU faculty members who are out there supporting, and it's people, praying. There's rainbow flags. There's dozens of people in the pictures. And, there was one of the quotes there from the Associate Dean, Nathan Ward. He said, quote, "There was a lot at stake riding on this event, so I'm really glad that it turned out the way that it did," end quote. So, I mean, we're seeing very affirming, we're just seeing, something that we've never seen before.
Yeah, for sure. And, I have to wonder, maybe this is BYU's way of counteracting the chalk on the sidewalks that, boy, there was that battle going on not too long ago. Where they'd go out and they'd chalk up the sidewalks, and all the faithful Latter-day Saints would go and wash it off, and then the LGBTQ supporters would go and put the chalk right back up there again right after they were done.
Oh my goodness!
This is probably BYU's way of saying, just stop chalking our sidewalks, sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the article, they said the crowd stood, hugged each other, and sang a popular primary song, "Love One Another." And, everybody who was part of this event said that they really felt great about it.
Yeah.
So it seems like a very positive step forward for the church.
It really seems to be. And this is something that I've noticed, is that within the church, I think you have a lot of people. And this goes back to what I was saying before, is you've got a lot of people that are supportive of those who are different from them, more so than I think the church realizes. And maybe the church is starting to realize that. So I think that's a good thing. It speaks highly of the membership of the church that this sort of thing is taking place, and we're able to take that kind of step forward. So hopefully the church will catch up.
I mean, this is a big difference from Ernest Wilkinson, the president back in, I want to say the early 1960s, who said, if in an official devotional of the opening of fall semester, he said, "If there are any homosexuals in the audience, please make yourself known so that you can be removed from this university. We don't want you to affect the student population, and we will give you a refund on your tuition." Talk about a 180 change.
And that's the other side that I have to wonder, because do you remember a couple of years ago they said, yeah, it's okay to be LGBTQ on BYU campus, and so a lot of kids came out, and then right afterwards, after those kids came out, they got kicked out of BYU. It's like, so is this a witch hunt? Is this more of that same witch hunt? I wonder. I do have to wonder.
Really, yes. So what they did is, 3 years ago, they updated the honor code and removed some of the prohibitions against LGBTQ students, for instance, holding hands, kissing another person. Those are not against the law of chastity as the church teaches. They removed those. LGBTQ students said, okay, fine, we will go out on dates, we will hold hands, and we will kiss a member of the same sex. And then those people ended up getting in trouble.
Yeah, for sure. And so that's why I'm afraid might happen. I really hope that BYU learns a lesson. I hope that they're starting to figure it out, that you can't be mean to people and still be popular.
I really hope so. I hope you're right, Al. I think this is, hopefully we're entering a new era and a different page of what we're going to see. And hopefully we've left a lot of those really evil BYU times. Hopefully, with the electroshock therapy and the other divisive rhetoric, where they put ads out, and they put ads out in the paper, kind of in an entrapment back in the 1960s to find gay students so that they could remove them. I hope we've left that far behind.
Yeah, let's hope so. I mean, enough is enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
idea,
don't need to be protesting anymore. Let's just open our arms finally. Why do we have to have protests?
Yeah.
This is just a matter of be nice, be tolerant.
Let's remove the pray the gay away. Let's remove the conversion therapy. Let's remove the witch hunts. Let's stop the rhetoric, and let's just do what Jesus, I think, would have us do.
Yeah, for sure.
That takes us on to our next article here, Al, which is
and we've only got 2 left, so hang there with us. This one, we're going a little bit more lighthearted, I guess, with these next articles. First one's from the dailymail.uk. Erica Tempesta wrote this one on June 17, 2022, titled Mormon Marriage Addict at 53, who has tied the knot 11 times, says she is simply in love with love, but admits she started marrying her boyfriend so she could have sex while still following her religion's strict rules. So we've got this lady whose name is Monette Diaz. She's a Utah-based interior designer, mother of 4. She's had over 28 marriage proposals in her life.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Over 28 people have asked her to marry them, and 11 times so far, maybe 12 in the near future, because she's still looking for that for her one and only.
Oh my God. I haven't even been on 28 dates in my life, much less 28 proposals.
Yeah. So 28 dates in your life to 28 proposals. She and every single time she answered 11 of these guys, 2 of which were the same guy. So she remarried 2 of her exes. Okay. But 11 times she said yes so far. She's still going for number 12. So she's been, let's see, on this TLC reality TV show, Addicted to Marriage. She actually broke up with her 11th husband while filming this Addicted to Marriage show. But she's still optimistic, and she keeps saying, well, I don't intend to get divorced from all these guys. I just, I keep hoping it's going to work. But as we go in, it starts to look kind of sad. Let me tell you a little bit about, I did some read up on these, and they this article, you can see it in the show notes, but I'm not going to go into each and every one of her husbands. But boy, they're kind of ranging. She had, let's see, her first husband, she married right out of high school. It lasted, and that marriage lasted for 10 years. I mean, so she had a pretty good run for that first marriage. But she, let's see, she did have premarital sex with her last 2 husbands, and she admitted that. So, the whole purpose of, well, she's getting married just so she can have sex, but, it seems like she's also kind of growing out of that thought that, well, she can have sex anyway, but she's still looking for her, Mr. Darcy. She's got this, she, let's see, number 9. She married, that one was noteworthy because he was a charismatic kind of a bad boy. She's like, there's some people that you probably shouldn't be with, even though you can't help being attracted to them. And so that's how she described number 9. They said, like, her sister, her daughters, she's got 4 kids, like I said. They can't even remember the names of all of her husbands.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, it's kind of a train wreck. It's a really sad story. But yeah, so she's, I think the real sad thing is that she has literally spent, and this is a quote from the article, it said she spent her whole life trying to force these men to live up to being this elusive soulmate she has in her head. So I really think we got somebody with a Mr. Darcy complex here.
Well, it says in the article that Monette chalked up her first 9 marriages to her desire to have sex while abiding by her strict Mormon religion. Mm-hmm. Is that what the church teaches?
Well, this is kind of the thing that we got back to the BYU students that would run down to Las Vegas for the weekend, get married by Elvis on the strip, have sex all weekend long, get it annulled on Monday, and then drive back up to Provo. And no need for repentance. No need to bring the bishop into this. No one's the wiser.
Oh my goodness. Is that a legendary story, or does that actually happen?
It has happened in the past. I don't know that it still happens, but it seemed like this was a thing back in the 80s and 90s was the thing to do at BYU.
Oh my goodness.
And it was the loophole. It's kind of, I think, the current thing that's been all over TikTok and social media is soaking. It's just these ways of, oh, well, technically, I'm still abiding by the church's teachings. And so, it's hard to argue with her. Technically, she is abiding by the church's teaching. She's not having extramarital sex, except for with her last two husbands. But up until number 9, yeah, she was completely temple worthy.
Well, Brigham Young married 56 wives. Joseph married at least 30, maybe even as many as 40.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess she's in good company?
Maybe, except for that she's a woman. And the teachings of the church is very much like the King of Siam from The King and I, that the flower can't go from B to B to B.
Well, I'm just wondering, I'm trying to put myself in the position of the 12th husband here. Okay.
Yeah, so exactly.
if you're the 12th guy with this woman, I mean, what is going through your mind? What are you thinking about? Are you thinking this is gonna last? I mean, at what point do you say, you know what, maybe she's not interested in long-term marriage? What a mess.
I'll tell you, number 11, he didn't even know about the other 10.
Oh no!
At first, I mean, he found out about them later, and he's like, "Well, this is bizarre." And she's like, "Honestly, I didn't intend for these marriages to last." But that seems to be the thing, is she seems kind of aware of the fact that she is chasing this idyllic soulmate that really doesn't exist. Okay. I mean, and the reason it doesn't exist is, and these are things that I learned in marriage prep classes at BYU, is you gotta, manage your expectations, buddy. You can't, go and expect perfection from everybody else, because if you found the perfect person, they wouldn't find you perfect either. So they'd kick you to the curb if you found that perfect idyllic person that's just everything you ever wanted. And that's what she's looking for. So she keeps taking these men that are just people and trying to force them into this, okay, well, he's going to, keep a clean house for me and cook me dinner and rub my feet every night, all the while going out and working hard in the yard, and I'll be able to sit there sipping a lemonade on the front porch watching him mow the lawn, and his rippling muscles and everything. It's not this is something that many people go through in their maybe 20s, or I guess according to the next article, in the early teens. But we go through this, but most people grow out of it and come to realize that, okay, maybe I am being unrealistic.
That does bring us our last article, which was on June 16, 2022 by the Babylon Bee, says that more Mormons are waiting to get married later in life, like until they're 22.
Okay, I really need to advocate for the Babylon Bee. If any of our listeners out there haven't read the Babylon Bee, this is like the Mormon equivalent of the Onion. Okay, and so we like this article. We're not going to take it too seriously, but what it is really funny, because they do take on real, like the kinds of beliefs that the LDS have. So yeah, like Brigham Young said that once you're 26 years old and not married, you're a menace to society. Well, that's kind of the mentality, right? Is they're going against that, saying, well, these kids, they come home from their missions at the age of 20 or 21, they need to be getting married right away. And so, now it's saying, well, actually, they're delaying marriage until 22.
Whoa.
Yeah, if you want
the article says that is a disturbing trend, Hal.
Yeah, they call it a disturbing trend. The church representative, which I can't remember the guy's name. My goodness.
I got it here. So this
It's
is
the most
according to
Mormon
church-
name. Say it.
Yes, according to church spokesman Orson McKay Young Snibbly Smith III. He said, quote, "Whatever happened to finding a nice broad-shouldered girl and settling down at the ideal age of 16, end quote."
No, this is like you our listeners out there, go to the babylonbee.com. You really need to peruse these. This is a blog of just parody articles, and it's hilarious.
Yeah, and this is from the article as well. It said at publishing time, leaders of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints were reeling from yet another study confirming that young Mormons are interested in having just one wife.
Yeah, I know. but yet again, the church has nothing to do with polygamy.
No, of course not. No, nothing whatsoever to do about it.
I know. I'm just it tickles me every time I read a Babylon Bee article. So I'm glad that we were able to do one for this week's episode.
Yeah. I don't think you can ruminate properly on the great and spacious beehive without the Babylon bee, right, Al?
Yeah, absolutely. So
well, it's been
maybe we'll bring the Babylon Bee back in the future too.
You bet. It has been a pleasure to talk with you about the great and spacious beehive, and we're really looking forward to having our next episode. You know, we didn't cover. We are on. We have an official website. It's mormonnewsroundup.org. And we also have an email address. It's kolob@mormonnewsroundup.org. That's KOLOB @mormonnewsroundup.org. That's with 2 N's. We're on Twitter at @newsmormon. And we also have a Patreon page. If you want to get some backstory about your humble host here, Alan D-Days, head on over to Patreon. You can unlock some bonus content on there. We're also on Facebook and YouTube. And we'd like to thank our sponsor at signaturebooks.com and also our music with weirdalma.bandcamp.com.
That's right. Thank you very much, Weird Alma, who's going to play us out with a hit from straight out of what was the name of it?
Straight out of Camorra.
There it is, Straight Out of Camorra, with Straight Out of Camorra in the title. Thanks, Steve.
Thanks.
When it comes to nicknames of the church, such as LDS Church, the Mormon Church, to remove the Lord's name from the Lord's church is a major victory for Satan.
Satan.
Please allow me to introduce myself. I'm a being with no moral constraints. My number one goal is to hurt the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.